For the past several years, Nikola Jokic has been discussed not only as the best player in basketball, but as a player reaching one of the highest peaks the NBA has ever seen. His name started entering conversations alongside LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Shaquille O'Neal because of how completely unique his dominance looked. At his best, Jokic was producing numbers that barely made sense historically, averaging near triple-doubles from the center position while controlling the pace of games so effortlessly that it often looked like he was playing at half speed. That reputation only continued to grow during the 2025-2026 regular season. Jokic averaged 27 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists per game, with both his rebounding and assist numbers leading the league. He finished the season with a 61% effective field goal percentage while leading one of the most efficient offenses in basketball. Denver averaged 122 points per game, the highest mark in the NBA, and their 122 offensive rating also ranked first in the league. What made this version of Denver especially dangerous on paper was that Jokic finally appeared to have a fully functioning co-star next to him. Jamal Murray was coming off the best regular season of his career, averaging 25 points, 4 rebounds, and 7 assists while shooting 48% from the field and 44% from three-point range. On the surface, this looked like the most balanced version of the Nuggets since their championship run. The offense was elite, the chemistry was established, and Jokic was still operating at an MVP level, which is exactly why the first-round loss to Minnesota felt so shocking. Not simply because Denver lost, but because the series exposed problems that are difficult to ignore when discussing a player in all-time conversations. Jokic's overall numbers still looked productive at first glance, as he averaged 25 points, 13 rebounds, and 9 assists during the series, but the efficiency underneath those totals dropped dramatically. His effective field goal percentage fell to 47%, the lowest playoff mark of his career, and far below the roughly 56% efficiency he usually maintains in the postseason. The issue was not just the final averages, it was how those numbers were being produced over the course of games. In Game 2, Jokic finished with 24 points, 15 rebounds, and 8 assists, which initially sounds like a strong performance until the efficiency and game flow are examined more closely. He shot 8 for 20 from the field, and just 1 of 7 from three-point range, while struggling badly during key stretches of the game. In the first half, he attempted only 4 shots, scoring just 4 points, alongside 2 rebounds and 2 assists. For a player widely viewed as the best offensive engine in basketball, that level of passiveness immediately stood out. Although he responded with a much stronger third quarter that included 16 points and efficient scoring, the fourth quarter completely reversed that momentum as he scored only 2 points while shooting 1 of 7 from the field and missed both of his three-point attempts. The same pattern continued in Game 3. Even the final stat line appeared respectable on paper. Jokic finished with 27 points, 15 rebounds, but he recorded only 3 assists while struggling for efficiency almost the entire night. He opened the game shooting 1 for 8 from the field in the first quarter, including 0 of 3 from behind the arc, and by halftime, he had scored 13 points on just 28% shooting. The second half brought little improvement. He scored 8 points in the third quarter while shooting 2 of 9, and across the full second half, he managed only 14 points on 3 of 12 shooting while making 1 of his 5 threes. Game 4 followed almost the exact same script. Jokic ended the night with 24 points, 15 rebounds, and 9 assists, but he shot only 8 of 22 from the field and failed to make a single three-pointer. More concerning was how ineffective he became late in the game. In the third quarter, he scored 6 points while shooting 1 of 4, and in the fourth quarter, he failed to make a field goal entirely, finishing with just 4 points that came only from free throws. Across the entire second half, Jokic scored 10 points while shooting 1 of 10 from the field and 0 of 3 from deep. Denver managed to extend the series in Game 5, although that victory came without Anthony Edwards on the floor for Minnesota, making it difficult to fully view the result as the momentum shifting back towards the Nuggets. Once the series returned to full strength, Denver lost Game 6 and exited in the first round despite entering the postseason with championship expectations. The reason these performances deserve deeper scrutiny is because the standards attached to all-time greatness are different. Once players began entering conversations alongside Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, Kareem, or Shaq, postseason failures become part of how their legacies are evaluated. LeBron's 8-point performance against Dallas in the 2011 Finals is still discussed more than a decade later because of what was expected from him at that level. Jordan's 3 of 18 shooting game against the Knicks in 1993 remains memorable despite his 6 championships because that is how closely all-time players are analyzed. Kobe's scoreless second half in Game 7 against Phoenix in 2006 became a defining talking point in discussions about his leadership and decision-making. The higher the all-time ranking climbs, the harsher the standard becomes. That is why this Minnesota series matters so much for Jokic. At the same time, the problems were not entirely individual. Denver's defensive weaknesses existed throughout the regular season, even while their offense covered many of those flaws. The Nuggets allowed 117 points per game during the season, ranking 21st in the NBA, and their 117 defensive rating also ranked 21st. Despite having the best offense in basketball, their overall net rating was only +5, barely inside the top 10. Those defensive concerns become far more visible in the playoffs once opponents had time to repeatedly attack the same matchups. Minnesota consistently pressured the rim throughout the series, exposing Denver's inability to protect the paint or contain dribble penetration. In Game 3 alone, the Timberwolves outscored Denver 68-34 in paint points. And when Jokic was on the floor, Minnesota shot 20 of 27 at the rim, an astonishing 74% conversion rate. That becomes even more concerning when considering that Minnesota was not viewed as an elite offensive team entering the playoffs. Among the 16 postseason teams, the Timberwolves ranked 11th in efficiency on non-restricted paint shots, 15th in mid-range shooting, and 15th in above-the-break three-point shooting. This was not an unstoppable offense, overwhelming opponents through elite shot making. Instead, they repeatedly generated efficient possessions because Denver's defensive structure broke down under pressure. That vulnerability became even more obvious in Game 4 when Minnesota continued generated offense despite injuries to Anthony Edwards and Dante DiVincenzo. Ayo Dosunmu, who had only joined the team at the trade deadline, erupted for 43 points on 13 of 17 shooting because Minnesota repeatedly attacked favorable matchups and targeted weak perimeter resistance. Throughout the series, whichever player Jokic defended often became the focus of Minnesota's offense, with the Timberwolves repeatedly forcing rotations, attacking downhill, and capitalizing on slow defense recoveries. Now the conversation shifts towards Denver's future because the financial reality surrounding the roster is becoming difficult to ignore. Christian Braun's contract jumps from roughly $4 million this season to more than $21 million next year and eventually climbs toward $28 million annually by 2031. Jokic himself is set to make $59 million next season, the second highest yearly salary in basketball behind Steph Curry, while Jamal Murray now holds one of the 15th largest contracts in the league, earning more annually than players such as Luka Doncic and Anthony Edwards. Denver spent approximately $186 million this season, and that number is already projected to rise beyond $215 million next year, giving the Nuggets the 4th most expensive roster in basketball behind only Oklahoma City, Cleveland, and Orlando. That financial pressure changes the stakes completely because once a roster becomes this expensive, flexibility disappears and expectations rise even further. A team paying that much money is no longer judged by regular season excellence or advanced metrics. It's judged almost entirely by postseason success. And that is ultimately where the pressure surrounding Nikola Jokic now exists. Nobody questions whether he is historically talented. Nobody questions whether his peak is statistically extraordinary. The question is whether this era of Denver basketball is producing the level of postseason success expected from a player whose name has already entered conversations with the greatest players the sport has ever seen.